Little Red Riding Hood by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. There once was a sweet little maid, much beloved by everybody, but most of all by her grandmother, who never knew how to make enough for her. Once she sent Little Red Riding Hood a red velvet hoodie, and it was very becoming to her, and so she never wore anything else. People began to call her Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here are some cakes and a flask of wine for you to take to grandmother. She is weak and ill, and they will do her good. Make haste, and start before it grows hot, and walk properly and nice, and do not run, or you might fall and break the flask of wine, and there would be none left for your dear grandmother. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say good morning, instead of staring about you." "I will be sure to take care," said Little Red Riding Hood to her mother, and gave hand upon it. Now the grandmother lived away in the woods, half an hour's walk from the village, and when Little Red Riding Hood had reached the woods, she met the wolf. But she did not know what a bad sort of animal he was, so she was not frightened. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," said he. "Thank you kindly, wolf," she answered. "Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To my grandmother's." "What are you carrying under your apron?" "Cakes and wine. We baked yesterday, and my grandmother, she is very ill and weak. They will do her good and strengthen her." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red?" "A quarter of an hour's walk from here. Her house stands beneath the 3 oak trees, and you may know it by the hazel bushes," said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, "That tender thing would be a delicious morsel, and would taste better than the old one. I must manage somehow to eat both of them." Then he walked by Little Red Riding Hood a little while and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, just look at that pretty flower. They are growing all around you. I don't think you are listening to the song of the birds. You are posting along just as you were going to school, and it is so delightful out here in the woods." Little Red Riding Hood glanced around her, and when she saw the sunbeams darting out here and there through the trees, the lovely flowers everywhere, she thought to herself, "If I were to take a fresh nosegay to my grandmother, she would be very pleased, and it is so early in the day that I shall reach her in plenty of time." And so she ran about in the woods, looking for flowers, and as she picked one, she saw another prettier one, and this went on for a while. She went further and further into the woods, but the wolf went straight to the grandma's house and knocked at the door. Who is there?" cried the grandmother. "Little Red Riding Hood," he answered, "and I have brought you some cake and wine. Please open the door. Lift the latch." The grandmother went to the door to open it, but she was unfortunately too feeble to get up, so she said, "Lift the latch." So the wolf lifted the latch, and the door flew open, and he fell on the grandmother and ate her up, without even saying one word. Then he put on her clothes and her cap, and lay down in her bed and drew the curtains. Little Red Riding Hood was all this time running amuck, picking flowers and gathering so many, so that she could see her grandmother. She was surprised to find the door was already open when she went to her grandmother's house, and when she went inside, she felt very strange. She thought to herself, "Oh dear, how uncomfortable I feel, and I was so glad this morning to go to my grandmother." And when she said, "Good morning," there was no answer. Then she went up to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay the grandmother with her cap pulled over her eyes, so that she looked very odd. "Oh, grandmother, what large ears you have!" "The better to hear you with." "Oh, grandmother, what great eyes you have!" "The better to see you with." "Oh, grandmother, what large hands you have!" "The better to take hold of you with." "But, grandmother, what a terrible large mouth you have!" "The better to devour you." And no sooner Had the wolf said it, then he made one bound from the bed and swallowed up Little Red Riding Hood. Then the wolf, having satisfied his hunger, lay down again in the bed and went to sleep. He began to snore so loudly that a huntsman heard him. And as he was passing the house, he said, "How the old woman snores! I had better see if there's anything the matter with her." Then he went into her room and walked up to the bed and saw the wolf laying there. "At last I found you, you old sinner," said he. And he took his great axe. With one big swing, he chopped the wolf right open, and out fell Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. They were all three very pleased. The huntsman took off the wolf's skin and carried it home. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine and held up her head again. And Little Red Riding Hood said to herself that she would never more stray about in the woods alone, but would mind what her mother told her. A few days after, Little Red Riding Hood was taking cakes to her grandmother once again, and a wolf spoke to her, and wanted to tempt her to leave the path, but she was on guard and went straight on her way. She had told her grandmother how that wolf had met her and wished her a good day, but had looked so wicked about the eyes that she thought it may have devoured her, even on the road. "Come," said the grandmother, "we will shut the door so that it may not get in." Soon after came the wolf knocking at the door and calling out, "Open the door, grandmother. I am Little Red Riding Hood, bringing you cakes." But they remained still and did not open the door. After that, the wolf slunk by the house and got at last upon the roof to wait until Little Red Riding Hood should return home in the evening. Then he meant to spring upon her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother had discovered the plot. The grandmother said to Little Red Riding Hood, "I was boiling sausages yesterday, so take the bucket and carry away the water they were boiled in, and put it in the trough." And Little Red Riding Hood did so, until the great trough was quite full. When the smell of sausages reached the nose of the wolf, he snuffed it up and looked around, and stretched out his neck so far that he lost his balance and began to slip. And he slipped down off the roof into a great trough and was drowned. Then Little Red Riding Hood went cheerfully home and came to no harm, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. If you guys want us to do more stories just like this one here on the channel, hit that like button and subscribe. And remember to always be kind to one another. And also, as the story has told you, listen to your parents, don't talk to strangers. And just all around, be careful of who you trust. I'll see you guys next time. Have a nice night, evening, or day. Depending on when you're watching, just have a good one, guys. And peace out, everybody.